Welcome to Freeze Your Milk Podcast. I'm your host, Bridget, along with my husband, Chris. Podcast where we talk about the comedic side and serious side of parenting, life, and relationships. We are boy parents. We have two boys, Enzo and Rhett, with about a 6-year age gap between the two. You can check out our website, freezermilk.com. Also, feel free to follow us on Instagram at Freeze Your Milk Podcast. Thanks and hope you enjoy. All right. Well, here we are, episode 1 of Freeze Your Milk. I'm Bridget and my co-host is...
I'm Chris.
And we want to talk about parenting and life and everything in between. So we figured this first episode we would take the time to kind of introduce ourselves, who we are, what our family dynamic looks like, and go from there. So I came into our relationship with one child already. When Chris and I met, my first son was almost 3 years old, and Chris got to come into dating somebody with a kid. And now we have that almost 3-year-old is now pushing 7, and we also have a 7-month-old. So going through different stages of parenting right now with both of those. So a little bit about me. I originally was born and raised out in Maryland, and moved out to Arizona about 8 years ago. So I'm kind of a desert girl now. Chris, why don't you tell about where you're from?
It's actually a unicorn. I'm born and raised in Arizona. Been here my entire life. So when I met Bridget, somebody from East Coast, I was just beside myself because I didn't know what to do with her. She was just all over the place.
Hey, ADD plays a factor in that too. How was it for you when you first decided to start dating somebody that had a 2-year-old, almost 3-year-old?
I would say at first it was terrifying, but exciting at the same time because it was familiar territory for me. I came from, I grew up in a little bit bigger family, but I had close friends that had kids, and I was always around them. So when I met Bridget and met her son, our son, it was just a huge eye-opener for me, huge experience. Every day's a roller coaster with these two. But now we've got another son who is 7 months old, and he has opened my eyes to just so much more.
Yeah. I think let's see if you remember. Do you remember one of the first things I told you about parenting when we first met and we first started dating?
Yeah, you told me that it was, you were going to have all these different emotions all at the same time. Can't remember exactly how you phrased it, but
the extreme
of all emotions. That's what you said.
Yeah. Sometimes within 5 minutes of each other.
And that is so true, because just like the 7-month-old, there are times that I just do not know who he is or what he's about or what he's doing. I get so frustrated and just beside myself. But that I can't completely understand how much I love him and care about that kid and will do anything for him to make sure that he is happy. It is a mixture of all emotions. That's what it is.
Yeah, and we'll get more into that. We're going to have a whole episode about the newborn phase and all of that and how it differs for a mom and a dad and how their feelings and emotions for the baby grow and develop a little differently. So we'll get into that a little bit more. What are some of your top 3 hobbies or interests outside of parenting?
Oh, well, I'd say the last years, or last 7 months at least, has been tough because we've just been so, inundated with children.
In the newborn zombie phase.
Yeah, I'm still trying to understand how I survive without 7.5 hours of sleep a night. But I would say, being in construction field, we love doing our side projects and anything that involves making our house better and making it more comfortable and making it more manageable for us. I think that's probably something that I thoroughly enjoy and I miss, and we haven't been able to do it recently, so hopefully we'll get back into it soon. But outside of that, it's mainly family. So
Yeah.
What about you?
Oh man, travel.
Travel's a good one. We've been traveling every year, which we take our annual vacation, which is always so interesting, but so much fun.
It's normally somewhere warm. We're not really cold weather travelers.
No, not at all. We want tropics. We want beaches. We want clear water. We want places we can snorkel, places that we can see fish and sharks and
scuba dive.
We want to be on the water.
Yeah, we're the vacationers that are water beach vacationers.
But we're thrifty vacationers.
We are.
Because every vacation we do on a budget.
Yep. So I would say for me, travel absolutely is one of my favorite hobbies. Something I haven't done recently, but I need to blow the dust off of, is photography. I used to enjoy doing that quite a bit. It's something I'm still kind of passionate about. I like having an eye for just seeing a look or a view of scenery, or the way food is displayed on plate, just a little bit different than everybody else.
Yeah, you used to go down to Phoenix and photograph and take different pictures, and you always had some really good images that you'd bring back. I remember that. We probably need to have you do that a little bit more. So.
Newborn life.
Yep, exactly. You gotta find the things that aren't completely time consuming and you can afford to do when you have babies.
Yes.
Because they take all your attention and all your money.
They do. And you stay home, which is why we podcast now.
Yeah, exactly. And now we can talk about it. And
yep.
It's fun. And it's life.
Parenting's a trip.
Parenting is a big trip.
It's something, all of the books out there will tell you that parenting is so great, which it absolutely can be so great. But for every time that it is so great, there are also times where you just stand there and shake your head and wonder, oh my God.
Yeah, 80% of the time you want to pull your fucking hair out. But that other 20% of the time
makes the 80% worth it.
Makes the 80% worth it.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about what it was like for when you and I first started kind of building our family together. So for me, coming into it, I was coming in with Enzo, who is at that time almost 3 years old. Enzo's dad is very much in the picture. He's an equal parent. That's our arrangement. So coming into the relationship of Chris and I was very apprehensive of wanting to bring someone around Enzo and wanting to introduce Enzo to somebody. But with Chris, it was very different. And the reason behind that, I think, is that we actually met before we started dating.
Yeah, I think our first passing was rather awkward encounter, actually, because you came over to my best friend at the time's house to see his wife, and me and my best friend were just hanging out there watching football, and you just completely came flying in the door and didn't give two craps about any of us. Just kept going and doing your thing, and it was very surreal to just watch you completely ignore me, I guess. so yeah, that first time was pretty awkward, but I would say that the second time at the barbecue was probably the better interaction that we had, especially with, you had Enzo there, and he was playing, and you were watching the baby, and
their baby, not our baby.
Yeah, our friend's baby at the time. But that interaction was much better than the first. So we'll put it that way. We'll leave it at that. We'll close the door on that. But I don't know. I would say coming into this relationship, it was very. Again, I didn't know who Enzo's dad was. I didn't know Enzo. I didn't know the dynamic. I didn't want to step on his father's toes. I didn't want to intrude in a relationship that, frankly, I was new. And I remember his dad, his biological dad, being very apprehensive about me in the beginning. I mean, so much that actually in the beginning, when our first Christmas came around, I made you ask his dad if I could buy him a Christmas gift, because I was just like, I don't know the protocol, or I don't know if is it a customary thing, or is it a formality that I should probably ask his dad for permission to buy his son a toy for Christmas.
Yeah.
So it was tough in the beginning, because I didn't know quite what Enzo was trying to learn who I was trying to learn who Enzo was, and then he was like, oh, this is another male figure, this is not my dad, who is this guy telling me, that I can't do that, da 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 da. It was tough in the beginning. It was very tough, and I didn't want to cause waves between you and him, or you and his dad, or anybody. I didn't want to cause problems in that dynamic, so I really just kind of, for the most part, I kept my head down, I think, and I just tried to build that relationship with him and build that relationship with you, meanwhile being mindful of the relationship with his biological father.
Do you remember, I can't remember exactly when it happened, but it was pretty early on in us dating when Enzo decided that you were the person that had the hug that made everything in the world better.
I think that was your first apartment.
Mm-hmm.
I think when he struggled for a while at that age. And that was a really difficult age for, I think, both of us, because Enzo, I think he was just
fresh coming into 3 from the 2s.
Yeah, he was in that
independence.
He was trying to figure out who he was within the family dynamic. He was getting shuffled back and forth between him and his, between his dad's and our place, and he's got this stepfather figure in his life that he's not quite sure of, and he was struggling in them. But when he would get really, really worked up or really, really upset, the only thing that he wanted was a hug from me. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I'm kind of a teddy bear, I guess, so I guess that kind of helps. But
for our listeners, Chris is 6'2", and everybody assumes he plays football because he has super broad shoulders and like just massive muscular arms. And Enzo, I mean, myself included, I think everybody loves a good hug from Chris, but Enzo would just absolutely like melt into you when everything was going wrong, or he was having a temper tantrum, or got a paper cut. It didn't matter what it was, whatever was wrong. If we looked at him, we're like, do you need a Chris hug? And he would just sob, shaking his head yes. And Chris, you would just wrap your arms around him, and everything would become right in that kid's world.
I want to talk about when he used to get like night terrors and freak out, and he would just be inconsolable for hours in our little single bedroom apartment. Yeah. And I was always so concerned that the neighbors were like up with us, and I was being in construction, I had to be at work at 4 a.m. and he's just out of control, and nothing would calm him down. And you remember those long nights?
Oh, God. It was... I don't know. I looked up and I did so much research about, is this a night terror? What does a night terror mean? What is the definition of it? Why is this happening? It was like clockwork. Every single night, he would go to bed, and probably about 4 or 5 hours after he went to sleep, he would wake up screaming and crying, hysterical, for like an hour. Like, it just did not stop. Like, did not want to be consoled, did not want the Chris hug, did not want mommy hugs, did not want a change of scenery, like, there was nothing that we could do. And it was really tough. I definitely remember there was more than one night where we kind of would take turns. And I think that's always been our parenting thing from the beginning, is we always try to tag team situations where like one taps in, one taps out, to give the other person a little bit of a reprieve. Even now, the baby, we're both pretty good about tag teaming situations. Yeah. But man, with Enzo, he would just start screaming. And so I would take, a shift of let me take him out in the living room and hold him, or try to put on super simple songs on YouTube, or some kind of YouTube like sleepy music with
just distraction.
Just something to get the child to stop screaming. Because again, same thing. I'm like, it's the middle of the night. My neighbors are going to call the cops because my child is sounding like he's getting murdered right now. Mm-hmm. Like, what is happening? And I remember on more than one occasion, I like walked back into the bedroom and just looked at Chris and I was like, your turn. I can't do it. I need a minute. I just need a minute.
Mind you, we were, 5 months into our relationship?
Yeah. Chris wasn't officially living with us. We were, he was doing sleepovers quite often, had like a shelf in the closet for some clothes, but we weren't officially living together yet at that point. So here's this man I just started dating like 5 months prior, who was being a freaking rock star of putting up with these nights of screaming child, bloody murder screaming. And I knew this one's a keeper.
Those were the good times, huh?
Ugh.
Now we got to do it with a 7-month-old.
I know.
But it's different now.
It is. We've learned a little bit more.
Yeah, I think I have a lot more patience nowadays than I did then. I used to think when he would go through those little fits that it was because I was there.
I remember I tried to tell you so many times, like, it has nothing to do with you, and you were dead set at that time in our life it was because of you that he was freaking out, and I was like, it has nothing to do with you.
I just remember thinking, like, I'd sit in my truck, like, I'd walk out and get ready for work, and it's pitch black out, no one else is out because I get up early, and I'd sit in my truck, I'd start up the truck, and I'd sit there and I'd be like, if I can't get this kid to like me, she's gonna leave me. I'm like, we're not gonna work out because she's gonna be like, look, it's my son over you, and my son doesn't like you.
Yeah.
So that was tough.
Yeah.
The beginning of it was rough. It was just a huge adjustment. I think, nowadays it's a completely different story. And
I didn't realize you had that like fear or concern.
Mm-hmm,
I mean, it's valid in the fact that, like, yes, if Enzo legitimately hadn't liked you, like, that would be a red flag. And I'd be like, hey, sorry, it is my son. But him screaming had nothing to do with him liking you.
Yeah.
But I definitely can see how that would be concerning and scary. And that puts like a whole nother, hey, I don't have to worry about just keeping Bridget happy in our relationship, but I need to also win over this child in addition to Bridget. So I got to put double the work in.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's not like I'm just trying to impress you. I got to impress him. And actually I got to impress him more because he's the final say. So that's a lot of pressure you got to put on somebody. Man.
And yet here we are.
And here we are.
You won him over?
Yeah, nowadays he sort of likes me.
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit. What'd you used to call him? You used to sing that song, something about monkey see or monkey do or whatever. You remember that? You were always talking about that. Anytime he saw me doing something, he'd want to do it too.
From the Jungle Book. I want to be like you.
Yeah, that one. It's so true, though.
It so is. That's funny. I totally forgot about that.
Yeah, I know. It's been an interesting road so far, but I want to go back to the barbecue, even though I decided that I didn't want to talk about it. I don't want to talk about it again. Bridget, tell me a little bit about your thoughts that day and how you were feeling about me, about the situation.
So I was actually dating somebody at the time, casually, not very serious at all. But I had not introduced them to Enzo yet. I had a rule. I would not allow Enzo to meet anyone I was dating unless I had been dating for 6 months. And for me, that rule was just because I wanted to make sure that there was somebody that I really cared about, and I felt like they weren't going to potentially emotionally hurt my child by bringing them into his life and then them leaving his life. So my goal was, with my 6-month rule, of kind of limiting the exposure of me entering back into the dating world after his dad and I got divorced. So I was casually dating somebody. They had not met Enzo yet. And I'm at this barbecue with my son, and I am holding our friend's baby. And I look over, and there is Chris just hovering, full helicopter parent on the playground that they have in their backyard because Enzo is attempting to climb this thing at that time, just like 2.25 years old. And you would never know Chris didn't have kids by watching him. He just, the hands up as the kid's going up the ladder. I don't know what Chris was necessarily thinking, but I'm sitting there watching this just going completely weak-kneed, goo-goo-eyed over this man with these piercing blue eyes, just attentively taking care of my child. Like, I mean, to all of our female listeners, like, how is that not so sexy?
Meanwhile, I'm thinking at the time, I'm standing here putting this kid up, like, if this kid falls and he breaks something, I'm screwed.
Please don't fall. Please don't fall. I'm so concerned.
Well, nobody else was watching him. It was just me. I'm like, there's this kid climbing up this ladder. He's really small. I don't want him to fall.
Enzo was always very, very petite as a toddler.
Yes.
So he looked even smaller than his age. So yes, that first barbecue, I distinctly remember I left that barbecue and I texted my best friend who lives in Brazil. And I told her, this guy I just met at this barbecue just went dad mode on Enzo. And it was the sexiest thing ever. And it's very distracting.
It wasn't long after that, was it?
No, I think...
No, because I asked you at the barbecue if you wanted to go on a date.
Nope, different barbecue.
Was it a different one?
Yeah, that was the first barbecue where Enzo was at. Was in April. And we went to another barbecue in November and went on a date then.
Yeah. No, I remember all the barbecues. Yeah, we didn't meet online.
I know, isn't that crazy in today's day and age?
No
Tinder.
No Tinder, Christian Mingle, or call us old-fashioned.
Had plenty of online dating, just the one that stuck was not online, which is crazy. Old-fashioned way.
Now I think a helicopter parent Enzo too, to this day. I think you have to. I mean, these kids are crazy. They're all over the place. Yeah. And you just never know. Something could come out of nowhere.
It's the biggest thing that I think it started with us having a joint custody of Enzo. That it was this mentality of the first major injury can't happen on our watch. Or if something major happens, will the other parent try to push to get more custody? And it instilled in us this sense of helicoptering, of constantly, like, we hover at the playground, you are always very much within eyesight, if not within, like, I can grab you, distance.
I think, and it always made it really difficult for us to enjoy outings. Yes. Or enjoy going to somebody else's house that had a pool that wasn't fenced off, or going to a park with a ton of people that he could get lost in a crowd. It made it very difficult for us to enjoy that time. Mm-hmm. And as he's gotten older, I don't want to say it lessens because it doesn't. Yeah. But at the same time, I think it's different because he's a little bit more understanding of his surroundings and what's around him and what's going on and people and the do's and don'ts. And, but it's still, I mean, it can be exhausting, I think. I
think it's interesting, too, because now that we have Rhett, you realize that helicopter hovering is still there.
Oh, absolutely. Because we have to do it with Rhett all the time. I mean,
yeah. And it's something that's interesting is that children will try to find 19 ways to die by 9 a.m.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And it is...
I mean, you should see our baby-proof living room. It's out of control. It's really comfortable, and I want to jump off a bridge onto it, but...
It's got a crash pad, it's fine.
Yeah, it's fine.
No, but I think that as parents, like, our job is not only just to get the kids, to the age of 18 alive, but as healthy and functioning as possible with the least amount of therapy needed.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. You said that, getting the kids to the 18, alive. But, going back to, like, my childhood and your childhood, I experienced plenty of physical traumas. I hurt myself all the time, and my parents were, they weren't helicopter parents. They were very, I grew up in the 80s, late 80s, early 90s.
You were like crash it, Chris.
Oh yeah, I mean it was.
If you could crash it, you would do it.
I mean it was free for all. I'd come home every day, bludgeoned and just beaten. And my dad's like, all right, let's patch you up. By the time I was
not beaten by the people.
No, not beaten by my parents, but beaten up because I was riding go-beds or quads or whatever the case may be. But
taking your bike at 6 years old on a 4-mile bike ride.
I mean, by the time I was 10 years old, I had broken like 5 bones. I mean, I started when I was 1. I climbing out of my playpen and breaking my leg at my nanny's house. I mean, it started young, and I think now as we've gotten older, I've looked back at that and I'm like, I love my parents, but man, they were very unattentive. And
it was just that generation. Like how many?
It's just different. I mean,
how many of us can talk about like, oh, the rule was when the streetlights came on, we had to come home. Like today's day and age.
Yeah, right. You don't even let your kids out of your sight until they're 18.
No, like human trafficking is real, kidnapping is real. These things happen.
There's just so many different things that can go wrong, and I guess I don't know if it's our parents' generation or when we were younger, it wasn't as heard of. I don't know if it because you didn't see all this stuff on social media about all these bad things happening. But
and the internet wasn't really a thing.
Yeah, well, the internet wasn't there, so the only thing you were getting was from the news, and you didn't have a lot of these stories. Yeah. But nowadays, it's everywhere you turn, something bad's happening. So I think it's just that mentality has shifted, and now our concentration is protect this kid, protect this kid, protect this kid, and it's exhausting. Yeah. Wears me out every day. Doesn't help that I only get like 3.5 hours of sleep a night.
Yes. Love all the lack of sleep.
But
so, Rhett is a micro napper. We have coined that phrase if it's not already out there. Micro napper. He is decent about nighttime sleep in that he does not wake up for very long, but he does wake up fairly frequently. Daytime sleep, micro naps. He will pull 25 to 35 minute naps.
He did a 17 today.
Ugh.
It was impressive. It was like if he went any less, he'd be going backwards.
Right. And he's like happy. He's not cranky. Yeah. He's energetic, good to go. Just doesn't
rolling around the living room floor.
It doesn't give parents or anyone time for reprieve.
No, man, it doesn't. And that's I think like we have a nanny. We're kind of bougie, but we have a nanny that comes in while we're working because we both work from home. But we can't watch an infant and work at the same time. Well, not very well anyway. But so we have this nanny, and you can tell when she puts him down and he wakes up after 17 minutes, she is just like, oh my God, I just need a break. It's like she is just so burnt out.
Well, she's used to nannying babies that do the normal 2-hour naps.
Yeah, that's not ours.
Not ours. Ours is like 17 minutes.
You get enough to she gets enough to go to the bathroom and get a cup of water, and he's back up and ready to go for another 3 hours. It's ridiculous.
Oh.
That poor kid, and he just needs to sleep. Yeah, except for now he's in the car seat issue, the car seat phase where you put him in the car seat, he'll sleep for an hour and a half. It's all over the place. I think we screwed him up when we went to Hawaii because we kept falling. We wouldn't go for those long drives.
And he wasn't napping in the pack and play at all.
No, he
in
wouldn't
Hawaii.
nap in the pack and play. He would only nap in the car seat.
Well, because it's not even that he wouldn't or he only would. We were just out and about all the time, so he didn't have a chance to nap in the pack and play. So for a week, he got used to only doing naps in the car.
And now he's just,
Yeah,
He's got the most comfortable room and setup. We have blackout curtains. We have, the temperature's perfectly set for him. He's got his little toys. His mattress is nice. Honestly, he's like a prince of Egypt. And he just, still, 17 minutes. He's up.
Yep. He gets separation anxiety.
Rhett's on a whole different level, man. Enzo is, when he was younger, and I didn't get to know or grow up with Enzo when he was a baby, just other than the videos and the pictures that you've showed me in the past. But I feel like the personalities are probably quite similar there.
Yeah.
But man, they're a racket. That's what they are.
It's interesting, but we're going to get into that more in some future episodes. I think we're going to wrap up for today.
We did it for our first one. How about that?
We made it. All right, everybody. Thanks so much.
Thanks, everybody, for listening. You can check us out at
freezermilk.com
or Instagram.
Freezer Milk Podcast.
Until next week, guys. Thanks.
Don't forget, parenting is a trip. We are all here on the journey with you together. Thanks so much for listening.